Welcome to Restoring the Truth, and today we're revisiting the pre-adamic era. Now, we don't hear a lot of scriptures surrounding this teaching, but we're going to cover some of the scriptures that used when you hear this teaching and go over them like a forensic scientist. Now, the word replenish is only mentioned twice in the Bible, but the Hebrew word for replenish is H4390 in the Strong's. It's used 251 times throughout the Bible, so we can get a good understanding of its different uses. It means to fill or be full of, accomplish, confirm, consecrate, be at an end, be expired, be fenced, fill, fulfill, be, become, flow, fullness, furnish, gather, together, presume, replenish, satisfy, set, space, have wholly. Now, some would say that since the King James says replenish, that settles it for me. But if you look in the 1806 Webster Dictionary, replenish means to fill, satisfy, stock, or become stocked. All of the Old English dictionaries written around the time the Bible was translated into English give the same basic definition. Replenish could mean fill or refill. You can look it up for yourself, and if all you're searching for is the truth, then why wouldn't you? So now that we know that this Hebrew word could mean fill or refill, let's look at all the information before you plant our flag and start counting coup. Proverbs 25:2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." Now, many commentaries promote the gap theory or the pre-Adamic era. I don't see anything wrong with reading someone's commentary, but commentary isn't scripture, and we're still charged with studying to show ourselves approved and rightly dividing the word of truth, and not only relying on the conclusion of others. So we're going to take a look at some of the scriptures used to promote this theory, but first we need to understand a few words and the differences between them: create, formed, and made. These words are the foundation of our teaching today, and while they are related, they have different meanings. In fact, they work together and rely on each other, as we will see. eSword has the most powerful study tool in the believer's arsenal. With the King James Plus, you can right-click on the Strong's number and choose Search the entire Bible for the use of that particular word represented by the Strong's number. As we look at the many ways these words are used, we can see what is actually taking place in the word that is being used to describe it, giving us a better understanding of what each word means. In each instance, you'll also notice the English word used, and in some cases, they are used interchangeably in the English. But we're looking at the original word because that is the language in which it was inspired. I would encourage you to do this research for yourself. I studied each verse for each word over and over until I understood it. Create means to bring into existence, but it doesn't always mean create out of nothing. Joshua 17:15 says, "If thou be a great people, then get thee up to the wood country and cut down for thyself there in the land of the Perizzites and of the giants." The words cut down are the same Hebrew word for create. So they are creating a space for themselves by clearing the forest, but also creating a product, wood. But when you cut down the tree, it still isn't formed. And when you clear a forest, a city doesn't appear. You haven't built anything yet. There's a few other words to describe those actions. The first one is formed. Now, you can't form something that doesn't exist. It first has to be created. You cut down a tree, and you make logs, boards, or beams. So to form something is to make it usable or give it a purpose. Isaiah 46:11 says, "I have spoken it, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it." Now that word purposed is representing the Hebrew word for formed, but it still isn't finished. It says, "I will also do it." And the Hebrew word for do it is the same word for made. Made means to accomplish or complete, to set in motion or empower. to advance or finish. Man is not a mannequin, robot, or statue. He can think, make decisions, have children, have dominion, and build things. Because God didn't stop at creating man. He formed and made man. He completed the task. To create steel, you smelt the ore, but it is unformed. Then you form it into sheets, bars, or pipe. Now it is a usable form that you can make things with. So in Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. But at this point, he hasn't formed anything. He hasn't made anything. And he hasn't established anything. In the next verse, the Bible confirms this. It says the earth was without form and void. Let's read it together. And in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. Well, that's exactly what we would expect to see. But verse 2 says it was without form and void. Does the word was mean that it became without form and void, meaning that it originally wasn't without form and void? Well, the word was is H1961 in the Strong's. And it means to exist, be, become, or come to pass. Once again, you can right-click and search the entire Bible for the use of this word. But you don't have to go far because verse 3 says, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. Let there be is H1961. And was is H1961. Now, I think we all agree that this was instantaneous when God said, let there be light, and there was light. So how does the same word one verse earlier default to billions of years or some huge gap in time? Remember, the first meaning given was to exist. So the earth existed without form and void. That was its current state at the beginning, before it was formed and before it was made. Verse 2 is just inventory. Was the earth destroyed and then recreated? Well, Genesis 2:4 says, these are the generations, which means history, of the heavens and of the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. And Genesis 1:31 through 2:1 says, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. Now, I haven't heard anything bad so far. In fact, everything was very good, even the host of heaven. And the darkness in verse 2 is also good, according to Genesis 1:31. Isaiah 45:7, God said, I formed the light and create darkness, which is the same Hebrew word for darkness used in Genesis 1 verse 2. Which was also referred to as evening, and later called night in verse 5. It cools the earth and is much preferred over light when you're trying to sleep. So when we read Isaiah 45:18, for thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it, he hath established it, he created it not in vain, he formed it to be inhabited. So why was it without form and void? Well, he hadn't formed anything yet. He hadn't made anything yet. Remember, he created the heavens and the earth was made of rock, dirt, and dust. Then he formed the animals and man from the dust. Then he breathed life into them and made them. Now we see in the exact order, he created, then he formed, then he made or finished, but then he established it, which means he provided for it so that it would endure and go the distance. He gave it sustainability. Then it says he created it not in vain, which means, well, several meanings for that. One's like a desert or wilderness, empty, or like being in the middle of an ocean would have the same meaning. The word vain is describing places that you would need rescued from, and we've seen people rescued from all these places. This is also the description of all the planets and stars today. But Isaiah doesn't stop there. It says he formed the earth to be inhabited. So he created the heavens and the earth, and then he formed the earth to be inhabited, not the heavens. So when I searched for created, formed, made, I found that God created, formed, made, and established the earth, but he only created, made, and established the heavens. He did not form the heavens. They're still without form and void. Once again, please study to show thyself approved. God did form the light, which the heavens reflect, but he did not form the heavens. He created the heavens, and he made the heavens. He set them in motion, and he established the heavens. Proverbs 3:19. And they keep perfect time to this day. But he did not form the heavens, but he formed the earth to be inhabited. Earth was just like all the other planets in verse 1 and verse 2 until God formed the earth to be inhabited. Well, when did he do this, and who is supposed to inhabit the earth? Well, he started in verse 3, chapter 1 of Genesis. Psalms 1:15-16 says, even the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men. Well, where do the angels live? Did they live here before we did? And when were they created? Well, you can read in Enoch 15:1-10. That spells it out very clearly as far as where their home is. In Daniel 4:17, the angels are called watchers, and Hebrews 1:14 says, all of the angels are ministering spirits. So why do you need legions of watchers and ministers before man is created? You don't. And where's their home? Well, Jude 1:6, and the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. They left their own habitation, which is heaven, to come to earth. Revelation 12:7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. Their place is in heaven, not the earth. Earth was made for the children of men. There never was a pre-adamic era. The angels did not live here before we did. It was formed to be inhabited by man. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So he's not coming willingly. So their place is in heaven, and they will be forcefully removed from heaven in the near future and hurled to the earth. Revelation 12:9 and Matthew 22:30 and 24:36, Mark 12:25 and 13:32 state that the angels are in heaven. Earth never was their home. Psalms 1:15-16. Earth hath he given to the children of men. Isaiah 45:18, he formed it to be inhabited. Angels are spirit beings. Their place is in heaven, which is a place that is without form and void. So when were the angels created? We can't say for certain, but Job may give us a possible time frame. Job 38:7, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Those who subscribe to the pre-adamic theory use this verse often to refer to a time before Genesis 1:2, but Job said these were morning stars. Now the sun didn't shine until verse 3, but the first morning star could not exist until it was made, which was Genesis 1:14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And while the star bodies may have been created, they had no purpose or mission. They were not made until day 4. This is exactly what we witness with the sun. It wasn't created twice. It was created in verse 1. Evening came first, and the sun began to shine on the first morning, verse 3. And then he made the sun on day 4. You have to understand the difference between create, form, and made before you get it. And he gave the sun dominion over the day and the moon over the night. He made, that's when he set things in motion in the calendar and time, and it's still going today pretty accurately. So there were no morning stars until there were morning stars, which would have been on day 4 when they shined for the first time. So in this verse, Job could not have been referring to a time before verse 14. Now, while I can't prove that the angels were created on day 4, that is what I believe. I think the evidence points to that being a possible time frame, and Job 37 does not contradict that. Since the angels do not reproduce, they would have been created at the same time. Perhaps it was a joyful time. Perhaps they were created when God gave order in the heavens. Genesis 1:16, which was right after the morning stars began to shine in verse 14. And they shouted for joy at their creation. I can't prove that, but that is my guess. So I want to be honest and forthright on this particular, when the angels were created. I don't think there's evidence that proves when they were created exactly, but they were created in the week of creation. It states that pretty clearly in Genesis 2 and 1. The heavens and earth were finished and all the host of them, and everything was very good. And even the devil was perfect from the day he was created until iniquity was found in him. So everything didn't start falling apart, before God even finished the week of creation. I think that's very clear. But as to when they were created, I think there's inference. If you want inference, it does exist for day 4 being the most likely scenario. But again, I cannot prove that. And finally, in Jeremiah chapter 4, beginning in verse 5, declare ye in Judah, and publish in Jerusalem, and say, blow ye the trumpet in the land, gather together, and say, assemble yourselves, and let us go into the defenced cities. Set up the standard toward Zion, retire, stay not, for I will bring evil upon the north, and a great destruction. The lion is come from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. He has gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy cities shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. So this is prophesying something that is to come. We're going to get to the much quoted verse, but in Jeremiah 4, but we never seem to hear in full context chapter 4. And that's why I'm reading to give you context. I'm not just going to take a verse out and just put it over in Genesis somewhere. No, we're going to give full context here. So this is a prophecy of things to come, and it sounds just like verses 23 through 27. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. I beheld, and lo, there was no man. And all the birds of heavens fled. Woo. Now the birds can't flee if they are not here. They were not here until day 5. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness. Well, the earth was not a fruitful place till day 3. And all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and by his fierce anger. So this is just repeating what was said in the beginning of verse 5. And verse 27 says, thus hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate. So this hasn't happened yet. It will happen in the future. How far in the future? Immediately, or billions of years into the future? Because the reason I ask is, according to some, the Hebrew word ha-yah, which is H, 1961 again. And the Strong's is the same word used for shall be in verse 27. So how can it mean billions of years into the future if you go back to verse 2 in Genesis 1 and 2, and then the next verse in Genesis 1 and 3, instantaneously when God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then somehow in Jeremiah 4:27 mean thousands of years ago. So I continue to hear these verses quoted as proof for a pre-adamic period, so I continue to shed light on the truth of God's Word. My mission is to restore the truth, and I thank you for listening to Restore the Truth. God bless you.